And I'm with Dan Scadam. Normally we do these together. We've asked Rick Jore to come. Dan is elder. I'm the other elder at In Church. And you can find out how to participate at In Church. Go to commonlawyer.com and go to the In Church button and find the link. You can join us for church on Sunday mornings. You can also join us on Saturday mornings. We teach through 2 books of the Bible, one on Saturday morning, one on Sunday morning. As we work our way through the Bible, we talk about the laws of nature, and the laws of nature's God, our common law, and the Bible. That's what those phrases mean. The law of the land, our common law, versus the law of the city, the canon civil laws of Rome, which govern almost every country in the world. Join us. You can see me, but I can't see you, and you can chat while you listen. Or do like some people, listen while you clean the house, or listen while you cook dinner. I've had people tell me they do all sorts of things. They cut wood even while they're listening. They get their cell phone. You can click on the link and listen on your cell phone while you're driving tractor or working or driving down the interstate. And we'd love to have you. Join us, commonlawyer.com. Thank you, gentlemen, Rick Jore and Dan Scadam. And we'll see you next video.
Thank you. I didn't even get to ask the question. Are you following the craziness in the state Senate, Rick?
Kinda. I was on Zoom, Dan, yesterday, and I'll tell you, talk about examples of the ethical, the rule of law being gone. 2 bills yesterday, SJ 15 about the same-sex marriage, and the hearing on SJ 15, which is a resolution against the Obergefell decision of the Supreme Court, and the assumption that the court makes law, right, and that applies as law to all the states, that they have to recognize that court's definition of marriage, which is a total violation of the rule of law in my view, and certainly the laws of nature and nature's God. And those that testified were just a long line of advocates for same-sex marriage with, I guess it was like 40-some of them, and just their expressions were such a mocking of God that I had to quit watching. I couldn't. I went out. I quit. I had another person call me later on it that watched all of it. That's how I knew there was that many. And then there was another bill that I testified on that I think is very foundational, and it would have prevented. It would prevent tax dollars from being used for lobbyists, Dan, to pay like MACO lobbyists, school board, Montana School Board Association lobbyists. Just from a purely ethical perspective, in my view, that used to be basically inarguable, that we recognized the ethical problem there and didn't do it. But that, again, there was a huge line. That went on for 2 hours of all these tax consumer groups complaining that their free speech rights were going to be violated because they couldn't use tax dollars to come to Helena. To go to Helena. So it just seemed such a confirmation to me, Brent, that once a society becomes so secularized, there is a blindness to ethics and morals, and of course that's logical, I guess, because when man turned to himself, that's autonomy, right? Self-law. And Schaeffer said, when any society rejects God, that society becomes its own God. And there's a subjectiveness there, no objective notion of morals, ethics, justice, or truth. It's all this advocacy of humanistic, subjective ethics and morality that was just I mean, I've seen it so much, but it was seemed to me like so magnified in these two hearings yesterday.
Sounds to me like you're talking about downright blasphemy.
You get a chance to watch the hearing, particularly on SJ 15. I honestly believe that you could call much of the opponent testimony as blasphemy.
Mm-hmm. Well,
what was the other bill?
What's that? Go ahead.
That you listened to, Rick?
It was Senate Bill 254, Dan, and it was compromised. And I suggested that they amend the compromise language out, but I'm guessing it won't even pass with the compromise language in it. I've been watching. I think it's one of the most significant bills in the session because it goes to the root of what our problem is. Net tax consumers are controlling the law, the law and policy in Montana. Net taxpayers are the minority. And there was another bill in the House. Apparently, it's not going to be brought forward. That's the same thing without the compromise language in it. But we're paying for our own destruction, and we're paying our masters to this notion of using tax dollars to lobby. It, to me, is such a basic ethics, an issue of basic ethics to realize that we are blind to that. Just is a confirmation for me just how secularized and humanistic we are, that we've to the point of almost Romans chapter 1 reprobate minds, that we don't have enough of a conscience to comprehend basic ethics.
Well, I see that too. I see that too. And
I think it's downright reprobate. A lot of that.
Yeah. You had mentioned a while ago I asked you about Trump, and what I got to summarize, I would summarize in my mind what you were getting across was that DJ Trump is doing what he's doing, but he is not the law. And I don't know that he would say that. I was disappointed with things that happened in the first administration too, but I racked that up to not understanding what he was doing and trying to get along. And decent folk try to get along. Decent folk, their first thought is, well, how can I compromise this situation? Not knowing that the people they're compromising with are not decent and will not reciprocate with kindness. It doesn't work that way. DJ did that. I think that's what he was thinking. I think after he took a bullet by the head and about 70 or 80 indictments, however many there was, it's come home to him that these folk are playing for keep and they'll kill you if they can, if they think it's necessary. I hope that's what happened. But at any rate, I'm with you. We're a government, to put it succinctly, as men have done in the past. We are not a government of men. We are not a government of the will of men. We are a government of law. And the will of law and the will of the sovereign is law, as Blackstone points out, with the laws of nature, and the laws of nature is God. I see that clearly. Well, there are many things that are going on now too, Rick. Sometime I want to talk to you about water rights and what you know about that and how this figures in. Yeah, and Dan, I want you to be able to ask questions, and I want you to bring things up, having been in the legislature, that you think are important about all this. And it doesn't matter what goes on in little places, and Montana, comparatively speaking, is a little place in America. It's a big state geographically, but it doesn't have a lot of population. I think, what, over 1 million people live in Montana? Can you fellows tell me?
Yeah, a little bit over, I think.
So you got 2 representatives to Congress, probably.
This just recently.
You used to have 1?
Yeah, well, years ago there was 2, and then we went to 1, and now it's back to 2.
Oh, I see. Well, any closing remarks, Dan? Comments about what Rick has said?
Well, just the whining that they're not getting taxpayer funding to promote their political view. That's kind of causing some turmoil in the national level too, because they're taking some of that money away there too. I just hope Montana gets the memo in time. But thanks for bringing that up, Rick. Very important.
Well, Rick, is it possible that you would come back and talk to us in the near future?
Brent, I enjoy it. It's not only possible, it's a total honor. Could I just mention on the concept of, we're talking about Mr. Trump, on my campaign materials, I quoted Washington on virtually all of my stuff. If to please the people, we offer what we ourselves disapprove, how may we afterward defend our work? He said this to the delegates at the Constitutional Convention. And then he said, let us raise a standard to which the wise and honest may repair. And I've always taken that as true leadership always calls men to a higher standard than what they would think would otherwise be possible in their lives. And just one point that I will make on Mr. Trump again that is disappointing to me is when this issue with marriage is foundational. The family has to be restored to have a free country. And so this resolution, in my view, was extremely important. I would have worded it different in some areas, but I appreciate Senator Phelan carrying it. But Mr. Trump appointed a openly homosexual married individual with a same-sex husband or wife, however they do it, and 2 adopted children to head up the Department of Treasury. And this, to me, this kind of compromise, I suppose, under the notion of our token homosexual in the administration for appeasement of the agenda of those folks, that's not leadership to me. I think it's dangerous compromise.
Well, I see your point. When he put out the executive order to end all references to sexual proclivity to 2, male and female, on all government forms, I was encouraged. When he said we're getting rid of all people in our armed forces that have had sex changes or want to get one, and I assume that it includes the cross-dressers and the transvestites or whatever they're called popularly, that's encouraging. But I wanted to see him say homosexuality is against the law and no more women in combat. But that didn't happen. Right. And I wonder, no more women in combat, confusing the roles of men and women, and a nation of cowards, like I say, a nation of craven cowards will send their daughters, their wives, their nieces to take their place in combat and catch bullets and shrapnel. Have we become that cravenly coward and sick and stupid and hateful to the female of the species? And then they get their arms and legs blown off, and we put them up as poster children for women running for office, and we put them in positions as senator and all that stuff. That's evil. That's evil men.
Absolutely. Amen.
And the men will answer for that, by the way, if I'm following the Bible. The women will not answer for it. We will, ultimately, for allowing it to happen. Well, those are the things that disappoint me, and I say, well, did DJ just doesn't think he can go that far, or does he support these things? I wasn't aware of what you just said. I don't follow it real close, but you knew something I didn't and brought it up, and that is a big deal. That's the foundation of government, is a man and a woman in marriage. And without that, government can't long exist that is proper. Again, Montana Dan, do you have any more comments? I want to know what you've got to say. And
all of this stuff is assaulting attacks at the basic foundations of what God set up, at the family, the government, and the relationship with all three, the church. It's all an assault on the fundamental. It's outright hostility to God, and
when you say fundamental, I remind myself that's the Latin word for foundation. And Rick brought up the verse, when the foundations are destroyed, what can a man do? He said it's rhetorical. I agree. In other words, it's a question that you ask. The answer is so blatantly obvious you don't have to give the answer. But the foundation, obviously, is where the Bible started with humanity and government, and it was the relationship between a man and a woman. It's Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve. That's not allowed in there. And so we could summarize, I think, everything we're saying here, that I am, and maybe you are too. I think I'm hearing this. What can we do with the rest of our time? We can work to reestablish, to shore up the foundations. Is that right, Rick? Dan is shaking his head.
Yep.
I agree, and I think I guess I just thought of something, Brent, that you brought to my mind. We work for restoration, even in the time that we have to work for survival through chaos that happens because of rebellion, but we look forward to restoration on the other side, if you will, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And I can give a personal testimony that once I got locked in, Dan, were you going to say something? Dan?
I know who wins in the end.
Oh. Yeah. Well, once I got locked into the idea that we should observe God's will, which is the will of the sovereign, being law, according to first principles, as it says in Hebrews 5, in other words, the fundamentals. Do not covet, lie, steal, commit adultery, or murder. And then the processes, the laws of nature, the processes, not the substance, the processes, how we're to do things. And the laws of nature's God, Blackstone tells us, is the Bible. That's what that phrase means. 2 volumes, these and no others, these and no more. And we, who was it that said, when a society or a country finds itself in a crisis, a people finds itself in a crisis, it instinctively turns its eyes toward its origins and looks there for a sign. And I see that we're doing that. Right-headed men are looking back and saying, wait a minute, what's the bottom line here? What is the fundamental? Are we violating the fundamental? Have we gotten so sophisticated in our law that we don't even know what the fundamentals are anymore? Have we been too detailed? And I think the answer is probably yes. Well, again, thank you both. And this is Brent Allan Winters and Dan Scadam, and we're here with our guest, Rick Jore, former legislator from the state of Montana, the no compromise legislator, he's been called. He's not there now, but he was, and he still pays close attention. I wanted him to weigh in. Montana Dan, former state legislator, he's weighing in. I call him senior statesman. When you get older, you've got a right to say something. No, you've got a responsibility and a duty to say something. Oh, that was a beautiful quote from John Quincy Adams. Ours is duty, and the result belongs to God. I'm paraphrasing. Well, see, something like that. Duty belongs to us, and outcome belongs to God. That's kind of what I heard. Well, let's do our duty. I told somebody the other day that he said, you'll never persuade me. I said, I'm not trying to persuade you. I'm talking to the cubic foot air in front of my face. But the outcome's not my business. The outcome, I'm supposed to say it. I'm saying it. Let me do what I got to do and just relax, will you? Oh, boy. Well, thank you very much. Yeah. And join us at InChurch, INN. Go to commonlawyer.com, www.commonlawyer.com, the website, and you can see how to click on the links, and you can listen to the old church services. You can join us on the internet, commonlawyer.com. Go to the InChurch, and you can listen on your radio or your cell phone or on your computer on Saturdays and Sundays. commonlawyer.com. Thank you, gentlemen.